$500,000 if that old guitar can outplay my band. What is it, Nathan? Too scared?
No, sir.
Dad, you were amazing.
$500,000, right here, right now, if that ragged old guitar can outplay my band. Richard Blake said it with a smile wide enough for cameras and cruel enough for the truth. The Pinnacle room went still. 300 people turned toward the entrance of the converted church on 4th Avenue, where Nathan Cole stood with one hand round the handle of a taped-up guitar case. He was 49, black, tired around the eyes, wearing a faded brown flannel shirt, scuffed work boots, and the kind of quiet dignity rich men often mistake for weakness. Richard lifted his bourbon glass and pointed. "Look at him, folks. Nashville keeps telling me talent is everywhere. So let us test that little fairy tale tonight." A few people laughed. Not everyone, just enough. Nathan did not move. His shoulders stayed level. His breathing stayed slow. But his fingers tightened around the case until the old tape creaked under his grip. "I am only here to play music, sir," Nathan said. His voice was low, calm. Too calm for Richard. That calm bothered him. Richard Blake was not used to calm from people he meant to embarrass. He was used to apologies, nervous smiles, bent heads, shrinking before he even finished speaking, so he stepped closer. The room smelled of champagne, cedar polish, expensive cologne, and stage lights warming old stained glass. A steel guitar hummed faintly backstage. Somewhere near the bar, ice shifted in a glass. A woman in a silver dress lowered her phone, then raised it again. Richard stopped in front of Nathan and looked down at the guitar case. "This thing even open, or did you tape it shut so the rats would not climb out?" Laughter spread across the room in small, ugly pockets. Nathan said nothing. Richard leaned closer. His breath carried bourbon and peppermint. "You smell like the alley behind a barbecue joint," he said. "And that guitar looks like it came out of my dog's shed." A man near the front covered his mouth, but he was smiling. A young assistant in a black suit looked at the floor. The bartender stopped wiping a glass. Nathan looked at Richard's shoes. Polished black leather, handmade, probably worth more than Nathan had made in 2 months. Then he looked at Richard's face. "I did not come in here to cause trouble," Nathan said. "No," Richard said. "Men like you never do. You just wander into places built by better men and hope somebody mistakes pity for opportunity." The words landed harder than the laughter. A few faces changed. Not enough. Richard turned back to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, before Steel River takes the stage, we have ourselves a little street corner miracle. Nathan Cole, local sidewalk entertainer, professional collector of spare change." Nathan heard someone whisper, "Poor guy." He heard someone else say, "This is brutal." And still, no one stepped forward. That was the part that always stayed with people later. Not Richard's cruelty. Cruelty had a face. Cruelty had a name. The silence had 300. Richard pulled out his phone and held it high. $500,000. If he beats my band tonight, I send it before he leaves this room. If he loses, he walks out that door and never plays on this block again. The phones came up fast now. Little glowing screens. Little witnesses. Nathan looked past them. For 1 second, his eyes found the stage, the guitars, the microphones, the warm spotlight. And behind all of it, sitting unused beneath a black cover, the Steinway grand piano Richard had rented as decoration. Nathan's face changed almost imperceptibly. Not fear, memory. Richard saw it and smiled, thinking he had found the crack. "What is it, Nathan? Too scared?" Nathan looked back at him. "No, sir," he said quietly. The room leaned in. Richard laughed once. Sharp, mean, then prove it. Nathan lowered his guitar case to the floor. The sound was soft, but in that room it felt like a door closing. But the story did not begin under those lights. It began 6 hours earlier, 3 blocks away, where the neon stopped looking pretty and started looking tired. Nashville on a Friday night knew how to dress itself up. Broadway flashed red and gold. Music poured from every doorway. Boots hit sidewalks that had been washed clean for tourists. Bachelorette parties shouted over pedal taverns. Men in new cowboy hats raised plastic cups and sang along to songs they half remembered. That was the Nashville people bought on postcards. Nathan Cole lived in the other one. He sat on an overturned milk crate outside a closed barbershop on Jefferson Street, his guitar case open at his feet. A cardboard sign leaned against the brick beside him. Songs for $1 or a smile. The sign was written in black marker by his daughter, Lily, because Nathan's handwriting leaned too much to the left when his hands were tired, and his hands were always tired. He played anyway. The guitar in his lap was a 1979 Gibson, though most people would not have known it. The finish was rubbed raw near the sound hole. One tuning peg had been replaced with a small bolt. The strap was held together with black tape and stubbornness. It looked broken until Nathan touched it. Then it breathed. His thumb carried the bass line. His fingers moved soft over the strings. Gospel first, then blues, then a little Motown when an older woman passing by slowed down and whispered, "Lord, I know that one." Nathan looked up and gave her half a smile. She dropped 2 folded dollars into the case. "God bless you, baby," she said. "You too, Mom." She walked on and he kept playing. He had learned years ago not to watch people too long. Some crossed the street when they saw him. Some smiled like they were sorry and kept moving. Some filmed him for 15 seconds, then walked away without leaving a dime. A few listened with their whole face. Those were the ones who reminded him why he still came out. By early evening, the case held $37 and some change. Nathan counted it without looking like he was counting. A man has pride, even when pride is all he can afford. He needed $1,200 in 6 weeks. Lily needed it for a college entrance exam prep course. Maplewood High had a counselor who said Lily had a real shot at engineering school if she could raise her test score a little. Lily had nodded when she heard that, calm and polite, but Nathan saw what happened after. She checked out college brochures from the library. She circled programs in pencil. She read scholarship pages at the kitchen table, like some people read scripture. She wanted a future so badly, she tried not to want it out loud. That hurt him more than hunger ever had. They lived above a laundromat on Buchanan Street. 1 bedroom, thin walls, pipes that knocked in the winter. The washing machines below shook the floor until midnight. Sometimes later, if somebody forgot a load. Nathan slept on the couch so Lily could have the bedroom. He told her it helped his back. She pretended to believe him. Every night she asked the same question. "How did we do today, Dad?" And every night he gave the same answer. Getting closer. He hated that answer. Not because it was false, because it was almost true enough to survive. That afternoon, before he left for Jefferson Street, Lily had stood by the kitchen sink in her school uniform, rinsing a mug that did not need rinsing. "You know I can skip the course," she said. Nathan looked up from tying his boots. "No, you cannot, Dad." "No." She turned off the faucet. Her eyes were steady, but her mouth was working hard not to tremble. "I do not want you killing yourself for a test." Nathan stood slowly. His knee cracked. He crossed the little kitchen and took the mug from her hand. "Baby, listen to me." She looked down. He waited until she looked up. "Your mother did not fight that hard for me to teach you how to settle." The room went quiet. That name always changed the air. Claire Cole had been gone 6 years. But some mornings Nathan still reached for the other side of the bed, before remembering there was no bed for him anymore. Cancer had taken her body. Bills had taken everything else. The car, the furniture, the upright piano his mother had left him. The one thing he had sworn he would never sell. He sold it on a rainy Tuesday to a man who did not even ask if it mattered. Lily swallowed. "Mom would say you are doing too much." Nathan smiled softly. "Your mom said a lot of things when she wanted to win an argument." For the first time that day, Lily laughed. Small, fragile, real. Then she packed his dinner in a thermos and wrapped a sandwich in foil. Now on Jefferson Street, Nathan played as the sun slipped behind the buildings. The air cooled. The smell of barbecue drifted over from Broadway. A black Lincoln Town car pulled up in front of the Pinnacle Room 2 doors down. Men in dark jackets climbed out. Women in sharp dresses stepped around puddles like the street had insulted them. Nathan kept playing. One man stopped. He was young, with slick hair and an earpiece, carrying the nervous energy of somebody paid to please powerful people. He listened for maybe 10 seconds. Then he looked toward the open doors of the Pinnacle Room. Then back at Nathan. Inside that building, Richard Blake was preparing to introduce his newest band to Nashville. Outside, on a milk crate, Nathan Cole was playing for dollars, and the distance between those two worlds was about to collapse. The young man with the earpiece was named Craig Dunlap, and he had learned a long time ago that power had a temperature. Richard Blake's power was hot. It filled rooms. It made assistants sweat through their shirts. It made talented artists laugh at jokes they hated. It made grown men rehearse sentences before walking into his office, then forget them the moment he looked up. Craig stood just inside the Pinnacle Room doors, listening to Nathan's guitar through the noise of the party, and for one small second, he forgot who he worked for, because the sound outside did not belong to the sidewalk. It was too clean, too deep, too lived in. Nathan was playing a slow blues line, nothing flashy, nothing meant to beg for attention, but every note had weight. The kind of weight that comes from bills on the table, a hospital room you cannot forget, and a child sleeping in the next room while you pretend you are not scared. Craig swallowed. Behind him, the showcase was already buzzing. The Pinnacle Room had once been a church, and the bones of it still showed. 30-foot ceilings, stained glass, dark wooden beams high above the floor. But tonight it had been remade into a shrine for Richard Blake. Black tablecloths, gold napkins, champagne towers, a wall of framed platinum records near the stage. Every detail whispered the same message. This man decides who gets heard. On stage, Richard's new band, Steel River, was waiting behind the curtain. Their frontman, Travis Reed, 27, handsome in that polished Nashville way, warmed up his fingers on a sunburst electric guitar. He was talented. Enough to impress a room. Not enough to scare one. Richard liked that. He did not build careers around artists who frightened him. He built them around artists who signed where he pointed. Richard stood near the bar, silver hair slicked back, black suit tailored close, bourbon in one hand, phone in the other. Nashville magazine had once called him the sharpest ear in country music, and he had framed the article behind his desk where every nervous songwriter could see it. He believed every word. Craig walked over carefully. Richard did not look at him. What? There is a guy outside. Street musician. He is actually pretty good. Richard turned then slowly. His eyes moved past Craig toward the open door. Outside, Nathan sat under the weak glow of a street lamp, head bowed over the battered Gibson. Pretty good, Richard repeated. Craig knew at once he had made a mistake. I just mean, people near the entrance are stopping to listen. Richard's mouth tilted. Are they? Yes. Richard took a slow sip of bourbon. The ice clicked against the glass. Then bring him in. Craig blinked. Sir? Bring him in, Richard said. Let us give the room a little reminder of the difference between talent and noise. Craig wanted to say no. He did not. Men like Craig did not survive 9 years beside Richard Blake by mistaking discomfort for courage. He stepped back outside with another staffer, a broad man named Vince who handled doors, crowds, and problems. Nathan looked up as they approached. His song ended on a soft chord that seemed to hang at the cold air a second longer than it should have. Evening, Nathan said. Craig frowned. You know me? Nathan nodded toward the badge on Craig's lapel. Says your name right there. Craig looked down. He felt foolish and hated that he did. Mr. Blake wants to hear you play inside. Nathan's eyes moved to the glowing entrance, then to the cars, then to the people in suits passing beneath the old church archway. Inside? Craig forced a smile. Could be good exposure. Nathan had heard that word before. Exposure. The thing people offered when they did not want to offer money. I am working out here, he said. Vince stepped half a pace closer. Boss asked nice. Nathan understood the message inside the sentence. He had lived long enough in America to hear words beneath words. He glanced at his open guitar case. $37. A few quarters. Not enough for Lily. Not enough for the prep course. Not enough for anything that mattered. Then he pictured Lily at the kitchen table, circling engineering programs in a borrowed guidebook, pretending she did not want too much. Nathan closed the guitar case. "All right," he said. He stood slowly, knees stiff from hours on the crate. He lifted the old Gibson with both hands, careful as if it were sleeping. Craig turned toward the entrance, already relieved the moment had passed without trouble. But Nathan paused. He looked at the pinnacle room. Through the open doors he could see warm light falling across marble floors. He could hear laughter, glasses, money talking to itself. He had not stepped into a room like that in years. Not because he could not, because rooms like that had a way of telling men like him what they were worth before they ever opened their mouths. Nathan took one breath, then another, and followed them inside. The room did not fall silent all at once. It happened in pieces. First, the people nearest the entrance stopped talking. Then the ones by the bar noticed them staring. Then a woman in a red cocktail dress turned with a champagne flute halfway to her lips and forgot to drink. Conversation thinned across the pinnacle room, like smoke being pulled from a window. Nathan felt every eye before he met a single one. He walked behind Craig and Vince, guitar case in his right hand, shoulders straight, boots quiet against the polished floor. The place smelled too clean. Lemon oil on old wood, fresh lilies, warm brass from the stage lights. It reminded him of church, but not the kind where people came to pray. This was a church for deals. A man near the wall murmured, "Who is that?" His wife touched his sleeve, "Do not stare." But she stared too. Nathan kept his eyes forward. He had learned not to give strangers too much of his face. Some people looked at a tired black man in work clothes and saw a story they had already written. Poor, untrained, desperate, grateful for scraps. They never considered that a man could carry a whole life inside him and still look worn out. Richard Blake watched Nathan cross the room with the satisfaction of a man arranging a lesson. He lifted his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called, "before we bring out Steel River, I thought we would honor Nashville tradition." The room gave him a polite laugh, unsure where he was going. Richard spread one arm toward Nathan. A man, a guitar, a dream, maybe even a few unpaid parking tickets. Laughter came stronger now. Nathan stopped in the center of the room. The spotlight from the stage caught one side of his face. It showed the silver in his beard, the lines beside his eyes, the dust on his boots from the sidewalk outside. His guitar case looked smaller in that room, older, almost ashamed. Craig stepped back, jaw tight. He had thought this would be quick, a joke. Richard would say something sharp. Nathan would play a little. The band would start. Everyone would forget. But Craig was already beginning to understand that humiliation has a sound before it has a consequence. Richard circled Nathan slowly. "What is your name again? Nathan Cole." "Speak up," Richard said. "This is a room full of music people. We listen for a living." Nathan looked at him. "Nathan Cole. There it is." Richard smiled at the crowd. Nathan Cole, local talent, Jefferson Street regular, professional sidewalk romantic. A few people raised their phones. Nathan noticed that too. The recording always came before the courage. Richard tapped the guitar case with the toe of his polished shoe. "Open it up, Nathan. Let us see what you brought into my room." Nathan bent down and opened the case. The latches did not click. They scraped. The sound made somebody near the front snicker. Inside, the worn Gibson rested against faded gray lining. Its body was scarred, the bridge dark from years of sweat and weather. Richard leaned over it. "Lord, have mercy." He looked back at the crowd. I have seen firewood with better tone, more laughter. A young woman near the back did not laugh. Her name was Nicole Brooks, a local radio host who had come to cover the showcase. She had seen men like Richard turn cruelty into entertainment before. She slid her phone higher, not because she enjoyed it, but because she knew people behaved differently when the world could watch. Nathan lifted the guitar, careful, tender, like it still deserved respect, even here. Richard noticed that and grew colder. "Go on," he said. "Play us something worth interrupting my evening." Nathan settled the strap over his shoulder. His fingers found the strings. For a breath, his face softened. The room, the money, the insult, all of it moved a few inches away. Then he played. A slow blues progression. Quiet, honest, nothing flashy. His thumb walked the bass. His fingers picked the melody like a man opening a letter he was afraid to read. The first notes changed the air. Not enough to save him, enough to make a few people stop smiling. Richard felt it. He heard the room listening, and he did not like it. So he spoke over the music. See, this is what I mean. Everybody thinks suffering makes them special. Everybody thinks a sad song and an old guitar means they deserve a stage. Nathan kept playing. Richard stepped closer. How much do you make out there, Nathan? On a good night. Nathan's fingers did not stop. 40, sometimes 50. $50, Richard repeated, loud enough for the room. I spent more than that on the ice in this glass. Some people laughed again, but weaker. Nathan let the final chord fade. Then he looked up. Richard wanted shame. What he saw was patience. That patience cut him deeper than any insult could have. So Richard set his glass on the nearest table, pulled out his phone, and raised it high. $500,000, he said. Right now. If this man and his taped-up pawnshop guitar can outplay Steel River on my stage. The room shifted. This was no longer a joke. This had witnesses. This had weight. Richard pointed at Nathan. You win, I send it. You lose, you walk back outside and never play this block again. Nathan stood still, and somewhere beyond the doors, 6 blocks away, Lily Cole picked up a thermos of soup and started walking toward the sound of the crowd. Lily Cole did not know she was walking toward the moment that would change how she saw her father. She only knew he was late. Nathan always came home by 7 if the tips were bad, 8 if the street was generous. He called if he had to stay longer. Always. Even when his phone battery was almost dead. Even when he had nothing good to say. Tonight, no call came. So Lily poured soup into the dented blue thermos, wrapped a turkey sandwich in foil, and told herself not to worry. She was 17, but worry had been living in her chest so long it felt older than she was. The sidewalk along Jefferson Street was damp from an earlier rain. Car headlights slid over the pavement. Music thumped from Broadway in the distance, that bright drunk heartbeat of Nashville on a Friday night. Lily walked fast, backpack still over one shoulder, her school sweater buttoned wrong because she had left in a hurry. She found his empty milk crate first. That stopped her. The cardboard sign was still there. Songs for $1 or a smile. The words looked smaller without him beside them. His usual corner felt abandoned, like somebody had cut the music out of the air. Lily looked toward the Pinnacle room. The doors were open. Light spilled onto the sidewalk. Voices rolled out, sharp and excited. Not concert noise, crowd noise. The kind that gathered around trouble. She moved closer. Inside, 300 people had formed a loose circle around her father. Lily saw his flannel first, then the guitar, then Richard Blake standing too close, smiling like a man who had never been told no and meant it. Her fingers tightened around the thermos handle. Nathan saw her at the door. For 1 second, the room disappeared for him. He saw only his daughter, the child he had carried through fever nights, the girl who used to fall asleep with math books open on her chest. The young woman who had learned to make coffee quietly, because she knew he sometimes came home defeated and did not want him to feel watched. He saw the question on her face. Dad, what is happening? And he hated that she had to see it. Richard followed Nathan's eyes and turned. Well, he said. We have family in the audience. Lily stepped inside but said nothing. That took strength. Richard looked her up and down. School sweater, old sneakers, thermos in hand. You bring him dinner, sweetheart? Nathan's jaw moved. Do not speak to her. The room heard it. It was the first edge Nathan had shown all night. Richard smiled wider. There he is. Craig Dunlap looked at the floor. Nicole Brooks adjusted the angle of her phone. The red recording light glowed steady. Travis Reed had come out from behind the curtain now, guitar hanging from his shoulder, his earlier smirk fading into something uncertain. Lily walked to the side wall and stood there with the thermos against her chest. She did not cry. She would not give them that. Her eyes stayed on her father. Nathan looked at Richard. What exactly are the rules? A murmur moved through the room. Richard blinked, then laughed. Rules? You said your stage or your band, your crowd, your rules. I am asking what they are. Richard liked the sound of that. It made him feel official. in control. He turned to the room as if he were hosting a televised event. Simple. Steel River plays one song. You play one song, the room decides. If they think your sidewalk act outplays my band, you get the money. Nathan nodded. And if I lose? Richard leaned in. You take that guitar, that little sign, and whatever dignity you have left, and you disappear from this block. Lily's mouth opened slightly. Nathan did not look at her. If he looked at her then, he might have walked away. Not from fear, from love. Because fathers will swallow almost anything to keep shame from touching their children. But then memory opened in him like a wound. Claire in the hospital bed, the oxygen tube under her nose, her hand thin in his. Do not let them make you small, Nathan. Not even to keep the peace. He had promised her. Then he had spent 6 years keeping the peace. Quietly, politely, painfully. He had let landlords talk down to him. Let creditors call him irresponsible. Let strangers drop coins without meeting his eyes. Let people assume the guitar was all he had ever been. But Lily was watching now. And children learn more from what their parents tolerate than from what they say. Nathan looked past Richard, past the cameras, past the circle of polished shoes and soft hands. He looked at the stage. There, under a warm amber light, sat the Steinway grand piano. Black, beautiful, unused. The cover had been folded back for decoration, but no one had touched the keys all evening. His fingers twitched, just once. Margaret Ellis, seated near the third row, saw it. She had arrived quietly earlier, invited by an old colleague, and almost ready to leave before the showcase began. Now she leaned forward, one hand pressed against her chest. "Oh, Nathan," she whispered. Richard followed Nathan's gaze and snorted. "What, you want to hide behind the piano now?" Nathan turned back to him. "I do not need your guitar stage." The rooms went still. "But if that piano works," he said, "name the song." Richard stared at Nathan for half a second, then laughed like the room had just handed him a gift. "The piano?" He turned toward the crowd, spreading both hands. "Ladies and gentlemen, our sidewalk legend has decided he is too good for his own guitar." A few people laughed, but there was a nervous edge to it now. The kind of laughter people use when they are not sure which side of history they are standing on. Nathan did not smile. He set the Gibson back into its case. He laid it down gently, as if apologizing to it. Then he closed the lid and fastened the ruined latches one by one. The scrape of metal carried through the room. Richard watched him, amused. "Any song, Nathan. Dealer's choice. You want gospel? Country? Something simple? Maybe chopsticks?" That got a sharper laugh. Lily flinched. Margaret Ellis did not. Her eyes were locked on Nathan's hands. She could see the tremor in them. Not much. Just enough. The tremor of a man touching a closed door he had spent years pretending he did not miss. Nathan stepped toward the stage. The crowd opened without being asked. That was the first strange thing. No one made a joke as he passed. No one reached for him. No one blocked his way. They simply moved aside, phones raised, mouths parted, glasses held low against their chests. The walk was not far. 30 feet, maybe less. But to Nathan it felt like crossing every year he had buried. He remembered Memphis. His mother, Evelyn, at the church organ, one foot on the pedal, one hand reaching down to guide his small fingers over the keys. He remembered the smell of old hymnals and lemon wax. He remembered her saying, "Music is not a trick, baby. It is how the soul tells the truth without getting interrupted." He remembered being 14 and playing at a school recital, while his music teacher sat in the back row with both hands pressed flat on his knees, stunned silent. He remembered the scholarship letter, full tuition, Nashville Conservatory, piano performance. He remembered holding it so tight the paper wrinkled at the corners. Then he remembered the second letter. Funding discontinued. Scholarship withdrawn. We regret any inconvenience. 2 paragraphs. No apology. A phone number that never answered. He had been 18 years old, standing in his mother's kitchen, learning how quietly a future could be taken from a person. Nathan reached the stage steps. His boot paused on the first one. Behind him, Lily pressed the thermos harder to her chest. She had known pieces of the story. The scholarship, the wife, the debt. The piano sold after her mother died. But there are some griefs parents carry in a way children cannot measure until they see the weight bend the body. Nathan climbed. One step, then another. The spotlight warmed his face. The Steinway sat at the center of the stage, black and polished. 9 feet of quiet power. Its lid was raised. Its strings caught the light like gold wires in a chapel. Richard had rented it because it looked expensive in photographs. To him, it was furniture with keys. To Nathan, it looked like a ghost. He stood beside it for a moment. The room held still. Even the bartenders stopped moving. Travis Reed stood near the curtain, his electric guitar hanging against his hip. He had expected a joke. A street man sitting at a concert grand, fumbling through nursery music, handing the room back to Richard. But now he was not sure. Something in Nathan's posture bothered him, not arrogance, familiarity. Nathan ran one hand along the edge of the piano, slowly. The polished wood reflected his fingers in dark waves. His breath caught once, barely audible. Margaret whispered, "There you are." Nicole Brooks heard it and turned slightly toward her, but kept the phone steady. Nathan sat on the bench. It was too far back. He adjusted it, pulled it forward an inch. Then another. Someone near the bar gave a low chuckle. Nathan ignored it. He placed both feet carefully, left foot flat, right foot near the sustain pedal, not pressing yet. His back straightened, his shoulders settled, his hands hovered above the keys. They shook. Lily saw it. For the first time all night, fear crossed her face, not because she doubted him, because she understood what this cost. Richard leaned toward Craig. "Watch this," he murmured. "He does not even know where Middle C is." Craig did not answer. He was watching Nathan's hands too. Nathan lowered his fingers to the keys without pressing them. 4 seconds passed. Then 5. The silence grew so complete that the air conditioner seemed loud. A piece of ice cracked in Richard's abandoned glass. A phone camera refocused with a tiny mechanical click. Nathan closed his eyes. He was not praying. He was listening for his mother, for Claire, for the man he had been before grief taught him to disappear. Then his left pinky pressed a single low C. The note rolled through the pinnacle room like thunder far away, deep, clean, alive. It filled the old church rafters and settled into the bones of everyone standing there. Nathan opened his eyes and began. He began with a hymn, not a famous one, not one printed in the program of any concert hall. It was the kind of hymn that lived in old churches with cracked pews and hand fans from funeral homes. 4 chords, slow, humble. His mother used to play it before Sunday service when the sanctuary was almost empty, and the ladies in white gloves were still setting out flowers. At first, the rust was there. Everyone heard it. One note came late. Another landed too soft. His right hand hesitated on a turn it would have taken without thought years ago. His wrist was stiff. His fingers carried the memory, but the body had been silent too long. Richard smiled. He leaned toward the woman beside him. "There it is," he whispered. She did not answer. Nathan heard nothing but the piano. The Steinway responded beneath his hands like an old friend waking from a long sleep. The low notes opened wide. The middle register held warm. The high keys shimmered, even when his touch was uncertain. He played the hymn again. Same melody, deeper this time. His left hand steadied. The chords widened. A small passing tone slipped between them, then another. Not showing off, remembering. His shoulders dropped half an inch. His breathing changed. The tremor in his right hand faded. Margaret Ellis covered her mouth. Craig Dunlap looked up. Travis Reed took one step closer to the curtain. The room had been waiting for embarrassment. Instead, it heard recovery. Nathan played the final line of the hymn, but he did not end it. He bent it, just slightly. A minor chord entered where the room expected comfort. Then a blue note leaned against the melody like grief against a doorway. The hymn became blues, not suddenly, honestly. His left hand began walking a bass line, soft at first, then firmer, each note stepping forward with weight. His right hand answered in short phrases. A question, a sigh, a memory that did not want to stay buried. A man near the bar lowered his glass. A woman who had laughed earlier stopped smiling altogether. Richard's smile thinned. Nathan's foot found the pedal. The sound opened. The bass rolled under the room, through the old wooden floor, into the soles of polished shoes. He played like a man telling the truth to people who had paid good money to avoid hearing it. The blues gathered strength. His fingers moved faster now. Still controlled. Still clean. A run flashed down the keyboard and disappeared back into the groove before anyone could clap for it. Then another, longer, brighter. His right hand began to dance above the rhythm, not like a trick, but like a voice that had been locked in a room and finally found the handle. Nicole Brooks stared at her phone screen. The stream had started with a few hundred viewers. Now it was climbing. She whispered, "Stay with me, Nashville. You need to see this." Lily did not look at the phone. She watched her father. Her whole life, she had known he was good. She had heard him play guitar through thin walls, on street corners, in the kitchen when he thought she was asleep. But this was different. This was not good. This was a door opening into a room she had never been allowed to enter. Nathan's face changed as he played. The tiredness did not vanish, but something older rose beneath it. Something proud, something trained by pain and not destroyed by it. The blues shifted again. A gospel rhythm returned in the left hand. Stronger now. Church hands, Memphis hands. The kind of chords that made people stand without being asked. But over it, the right hand began shaping something else. Classical, broad, romantic. A melody that stretched high above the room like a bridge. Margaret knew it before anyone else. Rachmaninoff, she breathed. But it was not Rachmaninoff as written. Nathan took the bones of the prelude and changed the blood. The left hand thundered lower. The right hand turned the Russian melody through the cadences of a black church, through smokes, debt, grief, and survival. It should not have worked. It did. It worked so well the room forgot itself. Phones dropped lower. People stopped recording, not because they did not care, but because the body sometimes understands before the mind does. Some moments cannot be held and witnessed at the same time. Travis Reed whispered, "My God." No one heard him. Craig heard his own heartbeat. Richard heard something worse. He heard the room leaving him. Not physically, but morally, the power was moving. Slowly at first, then all at once. It was leaving the man with the bourbon and the contract clauses. It was moving toward the man at the piano, the man in the faded flannel, the man everyone had mistaken for small. Nathan played harder. The old church rafters caught the sound and threw it back. The stained glass trembled in its frames. Champagne glasses vibrated on linen-covered tables. His hands crossed, separated, crashed down, rose again. Fast, clean, merciless. Then suddenly he pulled everything back, one soft chord, then another. The melody returned to the hymn, the first hymn, the one from his mother's church. Only now it carried everything with it. The lost scholarship, the hospital bills, Claire's last breath, Lily's future, every sidewalk where he had been ignored, every room where no one had asked what he could do. Nathan held the final phrase in the air. His fingers hovered. The room leaned toward him. And then he struck the last chord with both hands. Full, golden, alive. The sound filled the pinnacle room, rose into the rafters, and hung there like judgment. Nathan held the pedal down. No one moved. No one breathed. Then the note faded into silence. For 2 full seconds, nobody clapped. That was the strange part. Not because they were unsure, because the room had to return to itself. People blinked like they had been pulled out of deep water. A woman near the stage pressed 2 fingers to her lips. A gray-haired man in a navy blazer looked down at his own hands, as if ashamed of what they had been doing before. Travis Reed stood frozen by the curtain, his guitar hanging useless at his side. Then one person clapped. It was not loud, just 2 hands meeting once. Margaret Ellis. She stood slowly, her face wet with tears, her small frame trembling beneath a cream wool jacket. She clapped again, then again. Her eyes never left Nathan. That broke the room. Applause erupted from every side. Not polite applause. Not industry applause. Not the careful little tapping people give when they want to be seen approving the right thing. This was loud. Messy. Human chairs scraped back. Glasses shook. Someone shouted, "Yes, sir." Another voice cried, "Play it again." Within seconds, nearly everyone was standing. Nathan stayed seated at the piano bench. His hands rested in his lap. They were still now, completely still. He stared at the keys, breathing hard through his nose, not like a performer soaking in praise, but like a man who had run all the way back to himself and was not sure his legs would hold. Lily was crying by the wall. She had tried not to. She had pressed her lips together, blinked fast, swallowed hard. But when the room rose for her father, something inside her gave way. The thermos slipped lower in her hands. Her shoulders shook. Not with sadness, with recognition. For years she had loved the tired man who came home with coins in his pocket and pain in his knees. Tonight she had seen the man the world had stolen from him. Not gone, not dead, hidden, and still alive. Nicole Brooks stared at her phone, stunned. Her live stream had jumped from a few thousand viewers to tens of thousands. Comments moved too fast to read. Hearts floated up the screen. Questions stacked over questions. Who is he? What did we just hear? Did that man really play on the street? Nicole lifted the phone higher, voice shaking. Nashville, she said. You are watching something real. Craig Dunlap looked over at Richard. That was when he knew the night had turned dangerous. Richard Blake had not moved. He stood beside the bar with one hand wrapped around his bourbon glass, though he had not taken a sip in minutes. His face had gone slack in a way Craig had never seen. Not angry yet, not fully. Worse than that, unprepared. Richard was a man who lived by reading rooms before anyone else could. He knew when to flatter, when to threaten, when to sign an artist before a rival label heard the second chorus. But now the room was moving without him, against him. That was new. The applause kept coming, and with every second, Richard's bet became less like a joke and more like a debt. Travis Reed finally stepped out from the curtain. He walked toward the edge of the stage and began clapping too. Slowly at first, then harder. His bandmates followed, awkward and humbled. The drummer removed his cap. The bass player shook his head like he could not believe what his ears had done to him. Richard saw that, his own band. Applauding the man meant to embarrass himself. His jaw tightened. Craig leaned close, voice low. Richard. No response. Craig tried again. Richard, Nicole is streaming this. A lot of people saw the bet. Richard turned his head just enough. How many? Craig checked his phone. His throat went dry. Hard to say. Her feed is being shared. Could be over 40,000 now. The applause sounded louder after that. Richard looked at the crowd, and for the first time that night, he saw not guests, witnesses. The kind that do not go away when the doors close. The kind that replay video. The kind that turn a powerful man's words into evidence. Nathan finally stood. The applause changed again. It rose, stronger. People stepped toward the stage, not too close, but close enough to show respect. That word mattered. Respect. The thing they had withheld when he walked in. The thing his music had forced from them without asking. Nathan looked toward Lily. Their eyes met. He smiled once. Small, tired. Hers broke open. Richard set the bourbon down. The glass hit the table harder than he meant it to. The sound cracked through the applause. He walked toward the stage. The crowd parted for him, but the feeling had changed. When Nathan had crossed the room, people moved out of curiosity. When Richard crossed it now, they moved out of judgment. He reached the foot of the stage and looked up. Only 18 inches separated them. It felt like much more. Richard cleared his throat. That was, he began. The applause died slowly, leaving him exposed. He tried again. That was impressive. Nathan looked down at him from the stage. No anger. No victory dance. No hunger for revenge. Just a calm, so steady it made Richard feel smaller than shouting ever could. You expected nothing, Nathan said. His voice was quiet. But the old church carried it. That is why you lost. Richard's face hardened, but he did not answer. There was no answer clean enough for that room. You expected nothing. The words stayed in the air. They touched everyone differently. For some, they were a judgment. For others, a confession they had not meant to make. A woman near the front wiped under one eye with the side of her finger. A man in a gray suit looked down at his shoes as if they had suddenly become important. Richard reached into his jacket pocket. His hand moved with care, but Craig saw the tremor. Not much. Enough. The phone screen lit his face from below. He opened his banking app with the stiff precision of a man disarming a bomb. The crowd watched in almost total silence. Even the people still holding drinks seemed afraid to sip. Nathan stood on the stage, one hand resting lightly on the rim of the Steinway. He did not lean forward. He did not demand. He did not smile. That made it worse for Richard. A cruel man can handle anger. Anger gives him something to fight, but dignity leaves him nowhere to put his hands. Richard typed, $500,000. Craig leaned close and whispered, "Make sure it is traceable." Richard shot him a look. Craig stepped back, but not far. He had spent 9 years taking Richard's side in rooms where Richard was wrong. Tonight, with thousands of people watching through Nicole's phone, he could feel the first crack in his own obedience. Richard turned the screen toward Nathan. "There, happy?" Nathan did not look at the screen. "Send it," he said. A murmur passed through the crowd. Richard's thumb hovered over the button. For 1 second, everyone saw the same thing. Not just a rich man paying a bet, a powerful man facing the cost of treating a human being like a prop. That was bigger than money. Everybody in that room knew it. Some hated knowing it. Richard pressed send. The phone made a soft sound, small. "Final," Lily gasped before she could stop herself. Her hand flew to her mouth. Nathan looked toward her, and only then did his face change. Not pride, relief. It came over him slowly, almost painfully, like a man setting down a weight he had carried so long his arms did not know how to be empty. Nicole Brooks spoke into her live stream, her voice low. "Nashville, you just witnessed something no press release can clean up." Richard heard her. His eyes snapped toward the phone. "Turn that off." Nicole did not move. No. The word was quiet. It might have been the bravest thing anyone in that room had said besides Nathan. Richard took a step toward her. Craig moved first. "Richard, enough. The room caught that too." Richard turned on him. "What did you say?" Craig's face was pale, but his voice held. "I said enough." For years, Craig had watched musicians sign contracts they did not understand. He had watched Richard praise people in public and strip them in private. He had watched staff members apologize for mistakes they had not made. And like most people with decent instincts and a mortgage, he had called his silence survival. Tonight it felt like something else. Richard looked around and saw it. The staff, the band, the guests, the phones, the faces that no longer softened for him. He had not lost all his power. Not yet. But he had lost the room. And men like Richard always remember the first room they lose. Nathan stepped down from the stage. The crowd opened for him again. This time, no one laughed. A few people nodded. One older man reached out as if to shake his hand, then stopped, sensing Nathan did not want to be touched by strangers. Yet, Margaret Ellis came forward. She did not rush. At her age, she had learned that important moments deserved patience. She stopped a few feet from Nathan, her eyes shining. "You finally let them hear you," she said. Nathan lowered his head slightly. "I almost walked out. I know." Lily came then. She moved fast, but when she reached him, she slowed, as if afraid he might break. Nathan took the thermos from her hand and set it carefully on the edge of the stage. Then he pulled her into his arms. She folded into him. All the strength left her at once. "Dad," she whispered. He closed his eyes. "I am right here. You were amazing." He let out a breath that almost became a laugh. "Your mama would have said I missed 2 notes." Lily cried harder. Nathan held her tighter. Around them, the Pinnacle room still buzzed with stunned voices, but for a moment the noise blurred. There was only a father and a daughter in the middle of a room that had tried to make him small and failed. Travis Reed approached, stopping at a respectful distance. "Mr. Cole." Nathan looked up. Travis swallowed. "I came out here ready to laugh. The admission cost him something. You could see it. I am sorry." Nathan studied him. Then he nodded once. "Go home and practice, son." Travis gave a small, broken smile. "Yes, sir." Nathan picked up his guitar case. Lily took the thermos. They did not wait for reporters. They did not take questions. They walked toward the back exit while the room watched them go. Not as entertainment, as people. And outside, the cool Nashville air met them like mercy. By Monday morning, Richard Blake's office no longer felt like a throne room. The gold records were still on the walls. The leather chairs were still polished. The framed magazine cover still called him Nashville's sharpest ear. But every screen in the building showed the same thing. Nathan Cole at the Steinway. Richard Blake looking up from below the stage. "That is why you lost." The clip had spread across the country before sunrise. Radio stations played it. Music teachers shared it. Former artists under Blake Sound Records began posting their own stories. Not wild accusations, not gossip. Contracts, emails, old messages. Quiet took proof from people who had been afraid for years. By noon, 2 artists asked for independent legal review. By evening, a third announced she was leaving the label. Craig Dunlap resigned before Richard could fire him. His letter was short. I stayed silent too long. That sentence did more damage than anger ever could. Nathan did not watch most of it. He spent Monday morning at a small exam prep center on West End Avenue with Lily beside him. The waiting room had plastic chairs, a water cooler, and a poster about college readiness curling at the corners. Ordinary place, ordinary hot carpet, ordinary fluorescent lights. But to Nathan, it felt holy. The woman at the desk smiled through her reading glasses. Registration is $1,200. Would you like to set up a payment plan? Nathan pulled out his debit card. No, Mom. Full amount today. Lily turned toward him. Dad. He looked at her, and for the first time in years, his answer did not have to be brave. We are getting closer, he said. For real this time. Her face broke. She looked down fast, but he saw the tears hit the counter. The clerk pretended not to notice. That was kindness, too. Some people think kindness has to be loud. It does not. Sometimes it is simply giving someone room to keep their dignity. 2 weeks later, Margaret Ellis brought Nathan to the Nashville Symphony Rehearsal Hall. He wore his best flannel, freshly washed. Lily had ironed it twice. He carried no guitar this time, just his hands. The lead pianist asked him to sit at the practice piano. Just play what you played that night, he said. Nathan shook his head. That was for that night. The conductor, a calm woman named Helen Marlowe, smiled gently. Then play what is for today. Nathan sat. The room waited. He played something quieter. A hymn, a blues turn. A little classical line folded in like sunlight through blinds. Not performance, conversation. When he finished, no one shouted, no one stood. They simply sat there, moved in the way serious musicians are moved when they hear truth without decoration. Helen leaned forward. Mr. Cole, would you consider teaching? Nathan looked at her. Teaching who? Children who need someone like you before the world convinces them they are ordinary. That was how Nathan Cole became a community piano instructor with the Nashville Symphony's youth program. Part-time, modest pay, full benefits. A badge with his name printed on it. He kept it in his shirt pocket the first week and touched it sometimes to make sure it was real. The money from Richard changed Lily's future. Tuition fund, prep course, application fees. No loans hanging over her like weather. But the power Nathan carried after that night was not just money. It was witness. People knew his name now. When he spoke about forgotten talent, rooms listened. When he asked for donated instruments, pianos appeared. When he asked why kids on Jefferson Street had no music room, the city council found time on the agenda. That was power, too. Not the kind Richard had used to make people small. The kind that opened doors and held them open. And Richard? He did not become a better man overnight. Life is rarely that tidy. But his rooms got quieter in a different way. Artists brought lawyers. Assistants stopped laughing on command. Reporters started asking questions he could not polish into compliments. He was still rich, still dangerous. But he was no longer untouchable. That matters. Justice is not always a lightning strike. Sometimes it is the first crack in a wall everybody thought would stand forever. On a Saturday morning months later, Nathan sat at an upright piano in the Jefferson Street Community Center. The room smelled like floor wax and crayons. 3 children stood around him, watching his hands. A little girl pressed one key, wrong one. She pulled back, embarrassed. Nathan smiled. Try again, baby. Music is not about being perfect. It is about being brave enough to listen. She tried again. This time, the note rang clear. Nathan looked toward the window. Outside, Nashville kept moving. Cars passed, people hurried. Somewhere, a street musician played for coins. He closed his eyes for one breath. Then he opened them and taught the child the next note. So before you judge someone by their coat, their job, their shoes, or the corner they stand on, remember Nathan Cole. The world is full of people carrying gifts nobody has bothered to ask about. If this story reminded you of someone who has been overlooked, share it with them. Sometimes one person believing in you is enough to bring the music back.